It is noon, so I am going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Valerie Hurst. I'm with Kemper Cognitive Wellness, and I am the client advocate. I have spoken to many people, some of the people that are on the webinar today. I am your first line to Kemper Wellness. I am the client advocate, so anytime you call in, it's usually me that you will speak to regarding concerns that you have. Please feel free to call us at 216-337-1400 at any time. Kemper Cognitive Wellness is one of the nation's leading brain health centers. And Dr. Nate Bergman, specializes in brain health and is one of the nation's leading physicians when it comes to early cognitive decline, brain fog, and other cognitive concerns. Kemper Wellness is located in Rocky River, Ohio, and we do see people from all over the country. In the state of Ohio, it is required that that first visit be in person for when you're seeing the doctor, but we see people from all over the country, but we're very lucky to be right in Rocky River, Ohio. Our scope of services are quite unique. Everything that we do is based on scientific evidence and somewhat different from regular Western medicine. Our belief is that cognitive decline can be stopped, prevented, and reversed if we take action early at the first signs or even sooner, because now we know that cognitive decline roots itself in our brains years before any of our symptoms are noticed. Cheryl Freed is joining us today. Hello, Cheryl. Thank you for being here.
Everybody.
And I will turn it over to Cheryl. She'll tell you a little bit about her expertise, and then we'll get right into Take a Walk in My Shoes. Thank you.
Thanks, Val. And like she said, anytime you guys have questions, just type them in and she'll stop me and we'll talk about it. I have probably about 3 hours of information to share with you in an hour. So we're going to go fast. So you have to stop with questions if you want to get your questions in, because all I want to do is make sure I leave you with some really good information on this topic. As Val said, my name is Cheryl Freed. I'm the Vice President of Learning and Development for the Kemper Companies. I have been working here for 15 years, and my whole career here has been learning about and working with folks that have cognitive decline so we can help them live well. And I want to really reiterate what I just said, to live well with their cognitive loss, because we truly believe that it's just a diagnosis and there are things that we can do, like any other process that our bodies go through, that there's ways that we can live well with it. And so the topic we're going to address today is take a walk in my shoes. So you guys have heard this saying before that, please, until you know what I feel like, you really can't help me or have any, input on what's happening. So I hope within our next hour together that I can give you some experience and information so you can kind of understand what it may feel like if you have cognitive loss. And then when we know what is changing, we can focus on the abilities that people still have instead of mourning or really honing in on the things that they can't do. So I'm sure there's all different kind of people on this. There's a lot of people on here. So I don't even have an opportunity to ask, are you a care partner? Are you a person with cognitive loss? Are you a professional? So I'm really going to just talk generically and hope this is helpful for the person who does have cognitive loss. Like, yay, somebody gets it. I hope it's helpful for the care partner to go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that. And I hope for any professional that you're like, oh my gosh, this is really something I have to make sure that my whole team understands. So folks that have cognitive loss can get really good care. So we're all going to put our shoes on and we're going to all think about what do we have to do differently and what do we have to learn so a person with cognitive loss can live well. As I can't get my slide to move. Okay. All right, here we go. I got it to move. So shifting our mindset. So one of the, I call it foundation frame topics, is we have to make sure that we understand that it is our responsibility, not the person who has the cognitive decline, to shift their mindset. And I know that is so hard, especially if you're a spouse, especially if that is your mom or dad that you're seeing change. But we are the ones that have to shift our mindset. Unfortunately, the person that has cognitive loss, they can't help it. Their mind is already shifting in a way that they have no control of. So the first thing I want to talk about is let go of our expectations. So to have that person live well and you live well, we need to let go of them in the way that we knew them before they had the cognitive loss. Because if we continue to want them to be who they are, we're only going to be sad. If we continue to remind them what they're unable to do and make them feel upset about it, that is not good for either one of us. It doesn't mean that they don't have amazing things that they can still do and that we can't still have these amazing relationships with them, but we can't always expect them to be who they used to be. So what does that mean? Let me give you an example of that. If it's your mother may not be able to put on a whole Thanksgiving dinner anymore. And you can see that maybe she forgot the cranberries, and depending on where she is in her journey. And that's a lot. That is a lot for one person, even though they've done it for years. But mom always does the Thanksgiving meal, from getting the table ready to setting the table to purchasing everything to buying everything, organizing it, who's bringing everything in. And when I hope it's in your head, you realize it's not as simple as people make it look, and there's a lot of steps. And I'm going to show you that's one of the things that gets more complicated, are hitting each step of every complicated task there is. But please, what some people tend to want to do is then take that away. Well, I guess mom can't do Thanksgiving anymore. I guess I'll have to do it. Mom, you just sit there and I'll take care of it. But we want a hybrid approach. We want to say, Mom, I'm going to start doing Thanksgiving. I want to learn how to do this. So let's sit down and help me understand what I need to do, and let her be a part of it with whatever part she can. I bet you she can still tell you what the recipes are and how to do things and how to peel that butternut squash, but she may not remember all the steps there is to make the butternut squash. I'm sure she can help set the table once one place setting is set. So there are things that we'll have to always remember that they can't do all the way through, but there's parts of that. We need to let them have meaning and purpose in their life. So that's changing our expectations. So we're not always frustrated and saddened by their loss, and always look at what they can do. I have a wonderful reference here in the bottom of this slide if you want to take a quick note. A lot of this information that I'm talking about on this slide is in a book called I Was Thinking by Diana Waugh. It's a wonderful resource of how to handle your feelings and it's called How to Have Better Visits, but it's about how do I live with somebody? How do I talk to somebody? How do I talk to them on the phone? So we're not always arguing and being frustrated about what they forgot or they can't do. So what's the goal? The goal is to live well while you're living with dementia. Isn't that a great goal? You know, gone are the days. Please erase all that information or thoughts or the way we've made people feel when they got a diagnosis of anything, whether it was dementia, whether it was mild cognitive impairment, whether it's Alzheimer's, and we don't have time to go into all the different reasons why somebody can have cognitive loss. But whatever that is, whatever's causing the dementia, is that we want to make sure that they live well. And what does that look like? Well, in our eyes at the Kemper houses and the Kemper entities is we want people to be comfortable and content. Isn't that a great? Doesn't everybody want to live in a comfortable and content world? And so it's just the pure comfort, making sure that people have what they need. If you remember in high school, your Maslow's hierarchy, and on the bottom of the hierarchy, it was all the physiological things that we need. We need to have food. We need to be warm. We need to be dressed. We need to be clean. We need to be fed. We need to be out of pain. And so that is the stuff what comfortable is. So unfortunately, what happens to our folks that have cognitive decline is they're still going to have all those needs in their body, but they're not going to be able to automatically do something about it or understand what that need is. So just for example, you might be hungry right now. Okay. And you're like, oh my gosh, I should have grabbed something to eat. It is lunchtime. It's getting on the call late, but your body, you know your body well enough right now to go, okay, we're going to be done at 1. I can wait till 1. You can process that, all that information, or you could literally just walk and go get something and run back. Okay. That's a lot of decision making. That's a lot of thoughtfulness, where a person with cognitive loss might go, I feel this feeling. And then they use their behavior to say something's wrong. And then we think that's, I don't even like to use the word behavior, because behavior is just communication. It's there's something going on in my belly or in my body, and I don't know what to do with it, but I can't figure that out anymore. So we have to help. I call it being a detective. So, having good routines, things like that, to make sure that people are comfortable, making sure that they're warm, making sure that they're fed, that they're toileted, all those things. Because if you're not comfortable, you can't be content, and you can't go on and do other things. So comfortable and content, and having good moments. So good moments, you are not going to have probably good months. You're not going to then have probably good weeks. And then you're going to get to a point where you can't have a whole good day. And in reality, everybody, none of us have a whole good day, do we? We have good moments, but then we kind of say whatever the last thing that happened, oh, it was a good day, even though we kind of forget the bad things. But really what we want to do is create good moments. And sometimes a moment is just 5 minutes. So don't look at, oh, we're having a bad week, we're having a bad day. Can we have a good moment? And really be okay with that good moment. And we want to have meaning and purpose. As I was kind of talking about with the Thanksgiving dinner, is that don't take away things from folks. It is so common that we want to just say, oh, poor them. They no longer can do this because one time they didn't do well with that. But let's just figure out and change how we're presenting it. How can we set people up to be successful? My career before I came to Kemper House was working with folks with developmental disabilities. And even though there's many similarities, there's a lot of differences too. But the one similarity that I like to compare is that my whole career before I got here was helping folks and creating an environment and a attitude that what can we do so this person can do it, not take it away from them because they can't. And I like to think that cognitive decline is a disability. And yes, there's some things that they can't do or I can't do if I have a cognitive loss. But if you set my environment up and you give me manageable pieces of that, then I can still have meaning and purpose in my life. Everybody wants to have meaning and purpose in our life. So depending on what stage you're at or where you're working or who you're taking care of or where you're at personally, there are things that you can always do to have meaning and purpose. So even my lowest functioning folks that I'm working with, we still have them doing wonderful, amazing things so they can be a part of it instead of us just always doing for them. So that's a big slide right there. I don't know if there's any questions. If there's not, I'm going to keep going. But living well is the key. And these are the 3 things you want to strive for. Making sure they're comfortable so they can then be content, that we try to create good moments throughout the day, and that there's meaning and purpose in everybody's life. So one of my favorite slides in any presentation that I do, and I sneak it into every presentation, is Thomas Kitwood's enriched model. And this is very helpful for all of us to understand that just because a person has cognitive decline doesn't mean they're all the same person. And Thomas Kitwood teaches us that there's 5 components when we're working with or living with somebody who has cognitive loss. And he put this, I call it a math problem when I talk about it. So let's just talk about this as quickly as I can, but I want to make the point about how important this is. So the D stands for dementia. And so everybody's going to journey differently based on these 5 components. The NI stands for neurological impairment, and that is what's causing that person to have cognitive decline. So at this point, if somebody has cognitive decline, I am hoping you're working with a professional, somebody that's helping you understand the differences and why they're acting differently. That if somebody has their cognitive decline from a Lewy bodies versus Parkinson's versus alcohol-related dementia versus a brain injury. There's so many different reasons. There's over 100 reasons why somebody could have cognitive decline. And that's going to really help determine how they're going to process through. Somebody that is having early onset is going to look very different than somebody that has late onset. So that's one of the components that help us understand how they're going to live. The B stands for biography. It's always one of my favorite components because everyone is so different. And the person that you are living with, working with, has this amazing life story that comes along and continues on during that whole journey. And if they were a person that is a business owner and an accountant, they're going to be that their whole life. So we sometimes want to change people when they have dementia, but they really are still that same person. So we need to know, and that helps us know what kind of things that they would like to do. If they never like to go outside and garden, they're probably not going to want to start liking to go outside and garden. Now, they might enjoy the planning of it and how much does it cost and making lists, but they're probably not going to be the person that goes out and does the watering and planting and all of a sudden enjoy a new thing to do. So we have so much fun wherever we're working, whether it's Kemper Cognitive Wellness or at our houses, really learning about people and finding out who they were, whether they're teachers, whether they were doctors, whether they were lawyers, moms, whatever that they are. It is really important to understand that as well it is with your family member, because that's one of the key indicators of knowing how to help them journey well. P is personality. Well, as you know, we all have personalities. Already you probably kind of can guess what my personality is. I can't see you. I wish I could. There's just too many of you on the screen to do that. But you can kind of see what type of personalities are. You might look at me and go, oh my gosh, just too much for me. I can't be around her. Or you could be like, hey, she sounds kind of fun. I'd like to hang out with her. That's personality. And so you have to be very in tune to what the personality of that person is. So when you're trying to create ways to keep that person engaged and with meaning and purpose, that you're doing it with knowing what their personalities are. At our houses, sometimes it's interesting. Families will be so upset and they're like, every time I come and visit my family member, they're always in their room. And I will ask them, I said, well, tell me a little bit about what did they do when they were, before they moved in here? And they're like, well, it's my dad. And ever since he, since my mom passed away, he just doesn't like to leave the house. So he's home all day long. He loves to watch TV. He loves to watch TV sports on there. He's a snacker. He doesn't need a lot of entertainment. And he doesn't really like to be around a lot of people. So I kind of giggle and I said, well, then why do you think they want to be around a lot of people and go out and do activities and join the conga lines out in the hallway when they've never wanted to do that before? So we kind of smile, have an understanding. But that doesn't mean we're not going to do anything with that person. My father was a lot like that. He never left his room in his facility, never, the whole time he was there, except when we had to take him to the doctor or go to get his hair cut. And you know what? He was happy. He just didn't want to be social. He didn't want to go out there. People brought his food to him. He's fine with that. The activities director would come in every day to bring in the newspaper when there was newspapers every day. And he was happy, but we couldn't force. I mean, even if I said, come on, why don't we go check out something? No, I'm fine. Or I'd come in, I'm like, where's mom? And he'd be like, well, she's out flitting around somewhere. Well, my mother was the opposite. She'd visit every day, but she was very social. So her personality is, I just want to be a part of something. So she'd say hi to him. Oh, I'll be back for dinner. I'm going to happy hour. I'm going to take Susan next door and Rachel next door, and I'm going to take them down to happy hour and participate. And she became almost like a volunteer. So knowing that personality is very helpful when you're working with, or to be reminded of who the person is that you either married or that was your mom and dad. H is health. H is extremely important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this part component, but that's what's called a comorbidity. And I hate that word, but there's no other word for that. So to know how somebody is going to live and walk into their shoes, it's if they already have some medical conditions, and then on top of that, they have cognitive loss, that really complicates things for them. And then you're always trying to struggle. Is this the cognitive side or is it the health side of what's going on? So that plays heavily into that as well. The SP stands for social psychology. And this is what I want to get to, and what's the primary thing on this slide is that Thomas Kitwood, with all his research and with my 15 years of working with folks with cognitive decline, I will completely, wholeheartedly back up his research that it doesn't really matter what the neurological impairment is. It doesn't matter what the biography is. It doesn't matter what the personality is, the health is. If we don't treat people well and treat them as the way they need to be treated, they're not going to live well. And that means we're not going to treat them as children. We're not going to treat them like something's wrong with them. We're going to treat them as exactly the way they want to be treated. And we are going to create an environment for them to be successful and to feel needed and to have meaning and purpose in their life. And I know I'm making it sound a lot easier than it is, but that is what our task is. And that is what we've been given when we either work with or one of our family members have cognitive loss. We need to learn how to have a positive social psychology about it. There are wonderful ways to do that. And I hope we can get to some of those while we're walking through our slides when I keep walking us through some of the changes that are happening with our folks. So everything that we experience in our life is we evaluate that and we interpret that through our senses. And that could be like an interesting concept to think, because we are so used to just seeing things, hearing things, smelling things, tasting things. But have you ever had one of your senses taken away from you for a little bit? You know, some of you may, if you've had COVID, you know, people didn't have the sense of smell or taste, and they're still getting that back. It really changed their world in so many different ways. Or maybe that you had to have eye surgery and you only could use one eye. Or maybe you are having your own eye issues where you're having cataracts, glaucoma, things like that. Or your hearing has been impaired somehow, some way. Well, I want to walk you through all the senses and things that we can be aware of, some changes that will probably occur or already occurring, and things we can do and things to think about. So let's start with vision. So that's our eyes. And so first of all, we got to talk about eye health, as I mentioned. So there's so many components of the eye. And first, we're going to just talk about the health of the eye. So the eyeball is just a tool to get information into the brain, and then the occipital lobe interprets it and sends it back out. So there's a lot of things that could cause that information not to come in correctly. First of all, our glasses. I wear glasses. I don't know if you do, but I see very differently when I don't have glasses on. So right away, the information I'm sending to my brain is a little skewed. But then we can have the glaucomas, the cataracts. Boy, I just know somebody who every time when someone gets a cataract, I love to see they're like, oh my gosh, I can see so much better. It could be the glaucoma. It can be so many different things that could be happening. So no matter what, no matter how far along somebody is in the stages, please continue to take people to the eye doctor. And I'll say, please continue to take people to the dentist, because there's so many other things that are going to be complicating that if we can just keep their eyes healthy, or they could have a cataract removed, because it's going to be so much harder for them to interpret their world. So keeping up with medical things, doctor appointments, all those things are really important. Don't let anybody convince you like, oh, they have dementia. What does it matter? It matters a lot how they interpret the world. Another change that's going to happen is the vision field. So right now, if you're looking straight ahead, I would guess that most of you can still see peripheral vision. And folks with cognitive loss will start losing their peripheral vision, especially when they get to mid to late stage of the disease process. So imagine a world if you're just putting goggles on where you no longer can see on the sides. And then imagine a world where you then just have more of a binocular looking. And then at the end stage, your vision field could just end up being one eye, and then your depth perception all changes. So what does that mean for us? It means that we need to learn how to approach people from the front. It means to make sure that when we set up things around them, that it's close and it's not outside their vision field, that we greet them, that we talk to them from the front, not from the side or the back, get their attention before we talk to them, set things up for them to be successful. So as I said, I have so much information to share with you that each one of these slides, if I was teaching it, would be about 30 minutes long. So that's why I'm zooming through here to just give you some things to think about. So when you think about how are they feeling, this gives you some insight to it. So we're approaching from the front, depth perception can change. You may have even noticed, I know a lot of times when you go to the hospitals that there's those shiny, shiny, clean floors. And you're always like, oh my gosh, they're so bright. Who takes care of and they do look beautiful, but they really can cause folks with cognitive loss and vision difficulties, depth perception problems. Am I stepping in a puddle? Or you may see in your house when somebody's transitioning from a bathroom floor to a carpeted floor, they might step a little bit higher. That's all depth perception. So look at your house or wherever you're at with lighting and make sure the lighting is appropriate for your family members so they can see. There's so many things that we can do with lighting that can help a person with cognitive loss, whether it's in the morning, you open all the curtains and get the lights on. So it lets some serotonin into the brain, which makes us want to wake up. And it's just a nicer way to wake up and the body gets rejuvenated and refreshed. Where in the evenings, you can dim the lights, close the shades and the blinds and start getting the evening feel in the body in case the body gets mixed up with days and nights. So all this stuff we have at Kemper Cognitive Wellness through our Live Well series. There's so many resources for you that we'll show you at the end. And as Val says, we always give you our information so you can get a hold of us. But glasses, just a reminder with glasses is I wear glasses, and please have people's glasses on for them. Please make sure they're clean for them. So everything is about us giving them a running chance to help interpret their world. Hearing. Unfortunately, folks with cognitive loss get a bad rap that they're losing their hearing and they're hard of hearing. That is not the norm. You don't lose your hearing when you have cognitive loss. Usually when they say what, it's because they didn't understand what you said. So yelling or getting louder is not what you should be doing. It should be making sure you're facing them, making sure that there's no background noise. We'll talk a little bit more about that you're articulating clearly, that you're not saying too many words. I would never talk at the rate that I am talking to a person that has cognitive loss. Never. It is too much information. So learning how to, as I have on there, less is best. And then also adding gestures to it. So I always say when I'm training staff or if I'm talking with folks that are working with folks from mid to late, if you don't look like you're playing charades when you're talking to somebody, which is always adding gestures. Come on, let's go. Are you hungry? We're going this way. Always giving a gesture because that helps that person understand quicker, less words to absorb. And I also am doing a gesture, so it helps me understand. Sometimes I don't even need to talk. I can just go like this and it means you need a drink, or I bring drinks right to them. So there's a lot of things about hearing. Now they are going to maybe hear a little bit of hearing, ringing and buzzing in their ear. If you ever have an opportunity, we provide it once or twice a year for the community. It's called virtual dementia training. It is one of the best ways to take a walk in somebody's shoes. And I don't want to tell you a lot about it because we are able with the program that we're licensed to run to actually give you the feeling of having cognitive loss and what it feels like when your senses aren't working properly and when we give you things to do and it's very complicated to do. I'd love to give you guys resources. So if you see a flyer wherever you're living in a town where it says, oh, come and do virtual dementia training, do yourself a favor and go, because to me, it's the best 20 minutes that you'll ever spend with really understanding how to walk into somebody's shoes, okay? Now that background noise, I don't want to leave this slide without talking about background noise for a second. So often we want to, of course, include, and we should, our family member or we want to create wonderful, marvelous events, but sometimes that means it's noisy. It means there's a lot of people involved in it, and really watch the person that has cognitive loss, because what they're not going to be able to do is to discern what's happening in that big group. So think about that. We haven't been in big groups, so we're getting ready to maybe go into bigger groups. So graduation parties are coming, I'm getting wedding invitations again, and then maybe I'd want to take a person in my family that has cognitive loss. But watch when you get there. it's a lot of people talking, and yes, everybody's polite and comes up and says hello, but then they can't follow the conversation and they might get frustrated. And then you'll get frustrated because you might hear, I want to go home. And you're going to go, well, we just got here. But then you're going to want it, like, you got to think about it and think, oh my gosh, is it because I've not set this up to be successful for them? So having smaller group activities, having smaller group gatherings, having less people talking at the same time. Restaurants, if you're getting back into restaurants, they're very noisy. I even noticed at my age, I'm going to be 60 this year, I don't want to go to the really loud places. You know, we go out with the kids and you're like, this is hard. And we're all like, what are you saying? The band's playing or music's playing. And I always use these experiences to think, oh my gosh, what do our folks that have cognitive loss feel like? Or hearing loss. My husband has hearing loss. He just got hearing aids, and it's really complicated. And he's always adjusting his hearing aids to try to adjust to the sounds there. So this is another. So we already talked about vision and we talked about hearing. Those are the two biggest things I want you to think about when you're adapting your environment. If you want to have a really good conversation with somebody, don't do it in front of the TV. One thing at a time, not two things at a time anymore. Sometimes with dining, I know a lot of us are still, we can look at our phone, we can talk to somebody and we can dine. That is something that's going to get way too complicated for somebody with cognitive loss, because they can either talk to you or they can dine. It's just really too hard to do both of this. And then if you're distracted, then there's other noises. So think about how you're setting up your environment. We're going to zoom through the next three senses because they do have changes and they could impact some things, but not as much as that hearing and vision. So actually, folks with dementia may lose their sense of smell. Interesting. There's actually even tests that, you know, you can do, like the peanut butter smell test. If you can still smell peanut butter, that's a good sign. If you don't, it doesn't mean that you have dementia, but it is an interesting to let your doctor know if you're starting to lose your sense of smell, which is not a huge problem, except this is what's problematic when somebody has cognitive loss. It means that they won't be able to smell unsafe situations, smoke, potential hazards, things like that. How about bad food in the kitchen? Things like that. So they're not going to be able, I wonder how long the sandwich has been sitting in here. And if you can't smell that, because that's how usually a lot of us use it, because we're not like a facility where we label everything when we made that item. So that's concerning. And then also smell. A lot of people use their smell for pleasure eating. I know a lot of people who will smell something first before they'll put it into their mouth. So just to be aware that if you see some changes with your person with cognitive loss, with what they like to eat, or if they're not eating as well, it could have something to do with their loss of smell. So if you're going to visit somebody, like my mom has lost her sense of smell. She does not have dementia, but she, you know, we're always talking about it. She's so cute. She had a cat, it just passed away, but she's always like, do you smell the cat litter? Or I'm always like, are you checking your dates, you know, on your food and things like that. So sense of smell. So sense of taste, of course, aligns right along with the sense of smell. So taste buds may diminish, appetite preferences change. It may look like they want to have more sweets than savory, but really because of the taste bud changes, it's that they're craving sweets because they always have like a metallic kind of bitterness taste. So there's a lot of different ways, but remember, that doesn't mean I have to give them a Snickers bar. We still want to, you know, we believe in getting healthy foods into to anybody. That just because a person has dementia doesn't mean we shouldn't be fueling them with good food. So sweet, different fruits and things like that can be used to do that. And then you're going to really want to watch your person and weigh them, because we're making sure you're looking for unhealthy weight loss. Some weight loss is good probably for some folks, but unhealthy weight loss where you just really notice it's too quick, it's a really good time to like start monitoring that and making sure that you're talking to the doctor about that. So that's a lot to think about. I know am I ever trying to overwhelm anybody who's taking care of somebody that has cognitive loss, But there's so many things, if we know knowledge is power, that we can go, maybe that's why they're doing that, or maybe that's why they're frustrated, or maybe that's why they're not eating, or maybe that's why they don't want to go somewhere. So think of all that. It's evaluating that environment continually, 24 hours a day. Is it a good environment to eat in? Is it a good environment to sleep in? Is it a good environment to have social contact or to get a task done? So some of the other changes that happen are the social and skill changes. And these could be the more frustrating or noticeable ones for you, especially if it's a family member or a spouse. So one thing will change is the ability to make a decision. So if you and I walk into a dark room, what do we do automatically? Yeah, we find the light switch. We just go, we will find it somewhere on the wall. We kind of know it's going to be somewhere near the door, but you would never just go in a dark room and not look for a light switch. So our folks, I always call folks with cognitive loss, our folks will do one of two things usually. They will either go sit in the dark, and then if you ask them why you're sitting in the dark, they're like, oh, I don't know, I just felt like it, which is code for I didn't know where the light is, or I didn't know how to turn it on. Or it's going to be, I'm not going in that room because it's dark and I don't know how to find the light, and I don't want to ask anybody, because that is still going to be maintained for a while, is my sense of dignity. And I'd rather tell a little white lie about it. I'd rather blame you about it. I'd rather blame the environment. You forgot to tell me. And so when you start hearing words like that, that is the person's coping mechanism of, I don't know what's wrong, but something must be wrong, and I'm going to blame it on somebody else. So instead of having them go through that, go in and turn lights. Think of the things that they'd have to make decisions about. Gone are the days that you're going to be able to ask open-ended questions like, what do you want to eat? Oh my goodness, come on. We have to all agree that's the hardest thing to do when everybody decides to go out to eat and everybody's like, what do you want? It takes 15 minutes till finally somebody says, let's just get pizza, right? Well, how would a person with cognitive loss be able to be any better with that when they lose their decision-making skills? So choices between A and B are better now, and that both are good choices. So no matter what they pick, you have them and you can make them. So you can say, I like that idea. Pick two things that you want, let them pick the one of the two, and let them make good decisions that way. Clothing can become overwhelming. Take a look in your closets. I know in our houses, we just like to have seasonal clothes in the house, because too many clothes and options is overwhelming. It's overwhelming to you too. You just know how to make better decisions about that. You know how to decide what the weather is or where you're going and what you should wear. The next skill or social thing that changes and skill level is knowing when to start a task and when to end a task. And this is really complicated because there are so many things that we just do naturally that we don't even realize that we're initiating, sequencing, and completing and stopping the task. I'll start with toothbrushing. It's my favorite one. If you've heard me speak, I love to talk about toothbrushing. So there's over 30 steps to brushing your teeth. You got to know when to do it. You got to know where to do it. Then you get into where you're going to do it. And then you got to find the tools, which is your toothbrush and toothpaste. And goodness gracious, if you have an electric one and you add a water pick to it, but we'll just have a regular toothbrush for our conversation today. And then do you wet the toothbrush before you put the toothpaste on, or after, or both? How much toothpaste do you put on? And did I get the toothpaste? Because there's a lot of tubes that look like toothpaste. So, and then you got to get that toothpaste off. So one of the skill changes is I'm going to start losing my pincer grips. So it might be hard for me to do, but don't take that away from me. Maybe if I just leave the lid off, the top off, I'm going to be able to squeeze longer instead of doing this movement. And then it's like, where do you start? Where do you start brushing your teeth? You know I start back here, but if I'm having a whole classroom, we have a hoot just talking about how do you brush your teeth? And people are like, well, I start here, and you go around, you go up, you go down. There's so many different ways to brush your teeth, but we've initiated, okay? They're going. So they're here, they're brushing, and you go, Cheryl, great. I'm going to go out there for a minute. I'll be right back. You keep going. You're doing a great job. And guess what? You get back and guess where I'm at? I'm right at the same spot because I don't know when to move over. That's sequencing. Folks with cognitive loss are going to stop being able to sequence things. They're going to not know when to complete, because in all seriousness, when do you know when your teeth are brushed? How many times do you go up and down before you move over? Don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I hope you're getting my gist. It's a complicated task. But there are ways to help people when you're there at the right times to know, to tell them when to move to the next task. But there are tasks that are very clear. I love laundry. I don't love to do laundry, but I like laundry for an example of this. When the laundry comes out of the dryer, you can pretty much tell in a basket that anybody can tell that stuff needs to be folded. And it's so interesting. We can put a basket of towels that need to be folded just sitting out in our houses, and people will just come over and start folding it because they know that needs to be folded. Nobody asked them, but you kind of know when to start it and when to end it. You can find plenty of things for your family members to do or people to do that they can feel good about it, have meaning and purpose, that I did this and I can do this, whether it's straightening things up. I work with a lot of folks as a family coach, and one of my favorite stories from one of my favorite families is she said, oh my gosh, when I bring the mail in, it drives me crazy because all my husband wants to do is go through the mail, the junk mail. And I said, well, what does he do with it? He goes, I don't know. He opens it, looks at it, stacks it. And I said, why does that bother you? I don't know. It's just junk mail. And I'm like, but he's happy. If you want to have a good moment, let him sit at the table and say, hey, I got mail for you. Can you look through this and see if there's anything important? And walk away. You just gave yourself a 10 or 15-minute break, sometimes a half hour. Why does that bother you? So when we talk about changing our mindset, this is a really important point to this too, is that even though you don't know maybe why they're doing it, if they got a look of contentment in their face and they're enjoying doing it and it's not bothering anybody else, but it just bothers you in theory, that's when we have to change that mindset. Self-awareness, evaluate actions, and self-control. I'm going to apologize on behalf of the person with cognitive loss that this is going to change. That you may think, oh my gosh, they're being so selfish. All they do is think of themselves. Don't they know that I have needs too? Don't they know I have this? And they used to not be like that. It's not their fault. Just always remember, at the first second you get frustrated about anything, they are not doing this intentionally or deliberately. It's a broken brain. There's something broken in there that's not allowing them to do that anymore. So they may change the way that they used to groom themselves, or they, as meticulous as they used to be, because they just don't have that self-awareness anymore, or they might say things that may be hurtful to you because of the brain damage they have. So we have these filters up here, these amazing filters. And, usually you wouldn't say hurtful things to people. You might think them, but unfortunately our folks with dementia will start losing their filter and they're going to start saying things that could be very hurtful. We had a support group last night with a group of our families, and the one guy just said, yeah, it just went to a new level, that his spouse, basically said, I hope you die from some deadly disease, because she was so mad. And you never want to hear your spouse say that, but I just want you to be prepared that it's not intentional. They're just angry and they don't know how to share their anger anymore, and things just kind of slip out where you would think, oh, I better not say that. I better not say that. That's going to be hurtful. So there's a lot of things that are happening in that brain. And so it's just hard for folks to see another person's point of view sometimes. So time and reality really changes for folks. And this could be a frustration of yours, but one, if you understand it, it will be a little bit easier. So time is very different in the world of dementia. You may even know this. It's like, it's not sequential anymore. They may talk about something like it just happened last night, and you're like, that happened 2 years ago. And so you don't ever want to argue. Okay, I'm going to jump right down to that last point and then work our way back up there. It's the hardest thing to do. Every support group, we usually end with, what's the most important thing to do? Don't argue and say you're sorry. Does it really matter that the one small thing that you're talking about happened 2 years ago, not last night, and you spend 15 minutes or half an hour arguing about that? Yes, it did. No, it didn't. Yes, it did. And then you want to prove it. Yeah, human nature wants us to always be right, but dementia always wants us to be supportive. and just say, oh, I might have gotten that wrong. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk about it. Why are you bringing it up? Don't say that in your head. Okay. I'm with you. I know what you're talking about now, instead of arguing and arguing and arguing. And again, I know how hard this is. And every time that I work with everybody, they're always like, I know you're going to tell me to say I'm sorry. But to walk in somebody's shoes and understand, if you don't have any time in reality sequencing anymore, that you're trying to keep hold of one shred of dignity to understand what's happening and have some control over things. The book that I suggested with Diana Wash, she has some really good examples of that. And I'm going to give you an example that happened in my own personal life with my mom and dad. So my dad was in a facility. My dad was very meticulous about the yard and the house, and it was fall. And I walked in and I could tell my mom was really frustrated. And my dad was telling her, well, don't forget to call this person to clean the gutters out, because you got to do that before the first snowfall, or the gutters were going to back up. And, and don't forget to call the landscapers to do this. And I looked at her and she goes, does he think I'm dumb? I know all of this. And I kind of say, hey, Mom, can I see you for a second? I want to show you something out here in the hallway, because I already told you my dad wouldn't come out of the room. And I said, Mom, Dad's just trying to be helpful, and he's not saying that you're dumb, but can you at least allow him to at least feel like he's part of what's happening at the house? Because we never told him he's not coming back home. We just said he's there to get stronger. And so she went back in with a whole new thing. And she goes, you know what? Let me get I told her, get a piece of paper out and write down what he's telling you, so he can feel like he had something to do with it. So don't argue, let people be a part of it. Okay.
Cheryl, you do have a question before you move on. I don't know if you want to, it's quite a lengthy one, so I don't know if you have access to chat that you can take a quick peek at it, but the question is, many folks these days live in a senior living residence where there's an independent living section and then an assisted living, of course. What is your advice when encountering the neurodiversity evident among the variety of seniors in these types of residences? You don't want to ignore people, but you're not taking care of them directly. Still, what might be helpful?
So if I'm understanding the question, so there's a facility that was a continuum of care where it has assisted living, independent living, and then sometimes they'll have their dementia care. And obviously these neighborhoods are open to each other, so they might pass each other. So that's a pretty detailed question, because I don't know if it's in regards to if you're a family member or if you're somebody that lives in independent living and then you run into somebody that has cognitive loss. So I don't really know how, Val, I'm sorry, maybe whoever asked that, if you could just clarify it a little bit for me, because there's 3 different ways that I can answer that. Okay, so I'm going to let you type a little bit more information, and I'm going to go back to that question. Okay, Val?
That's perfect. Thank you. I'll let you know.
Yeah, that's great, because it's a great concept that we should touch base with our last 8 minutes that we have. So you can't force a person to remember. So again, don't argue. And then I'm going to tell you a kind of an interesting thing, and people always giggle with this one. There's 3 questions that you should try to avoid, especially the farther along somebody journeys. And because these are usually one of the things that happens, that short-term memory isn't there. So you're asking these questions with hopes that they remember these 3 things. And then you just get frustrated, or they'll be up by their answers. So let me just say the questions, and it might, you'll understand. Hi, how are you? Well, most people, if I say, hi, how are you? They'll just say fine, because that's what we do. It's a rote answer. It's a procedural answer. Or they might say horrible, or I'm angry, or what. So no matter what, they're not going to really be able to say what they feel. The next question is, so what did you do today? All right. Say you're visiting somebody in, assisted living or in their home, or you call your mom to check on them. And I did nothing. I did absolutely nothing. And then you're like, oh my gosh, you're just sitting home doing nothing. Well, maybe they didn't remember. So you can't ask that question to really get good answers. And then you're going to ask, especially in a facility, if you're visiting, what did you eat? And then a lot of times our families get nothing. I don't think I ate. Well, I don't make many promises at our places, but one thing I do promise is that they got out of their room and that they did get something to eat and they did have something to do. But the problem is that short-term memory. And then you get frustrated because they can't tell you. And then you try to force that person to remember. And then an argument ensues. And I hope some of you are giggling, especially if you're our spouses, because you know those conversations happen. But I'm hoping that these ideas help you, again, set up an environment and better understand what they are still capable of doing. Remember, bringing pictures, talking about past is always going to be more successful than current. I'm not a big fan either of telling somebody too early about something that's happening, or not in 5 minutes. You know your family members and the people you work with more, but if you tell somebody in a week in advance, hey, the kids are coming this weekend, we got to start cleaning, get ready. That could either be a time of stress, or it could be a time of forgetfulness. And then when Friday comes and all of a sudden he's not getting up or she's not getting up, and you're like, I told you the kids are coming in 5 hours. What? You never told me the kids were coming in 5 hours. So that is one of the practical reasons of why to remember that time is of no sequence. So Val, did you get any more clarification about that question?
I did, Cheryl. And it is, this person is not a family member. They actually are a resident also.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
helps.
That does help a lot. I think, thanks for asking that question, but I think everything that we're talking about should be helpful when you run into somebody, you know? If they're asking for help, of course, I'd always give their staff, but just, you know, tell them, don't ask questions. This is my big thing I teach. Don't ask questions, just make comments. Oh my, your outfit is beautiful today. Your hair looks beautiful today. Did you see how pretty it is outside today? But the hi, how are you? And, you know, all those kind of things opens up a topic that's real hard for them to discuss. So I think that could be very helpful. I think just the more you learn in independent living, that you can understand what they might be doing, or if they're just wandering and they have that look that they just might need some help. You may ask them, are you looking for somewhere? You know, are you looking for the restaurant? Are you looking for something? So I'm a big help people. So if in any way you can help that person get to where they're going, or help them get to at least the nurse's station, if you see that look, or you don't know, you know, don't know what they need. So I hope that helps a little bit. So I hope there's other questions. We do have a little, I just, you know, want to, as Val talked about, that Kemper Cognitive Wellness, we're your complete resource for cognitive care. We love to help people. We know how difficult and complicated that having a cognitive loss is. There's so many parts to it, moving parts to it. What do I do first? I just got the diagnosis, to having subjective cognitive impairment, which is something a doctor can't even tell you that you have, but you just kind of know that something's different in my brain. It's the word finding. It's like, I can't process things as well as I used to, or I seem to be more tired. It is amazing how many things that could be causing you to not have your brain work well. And the earlier that you go and visit somebody and talk about it, the better it is for you. There is hope. Again, don't wait till it's too far. Start talking to somebody about it now. Is there any other questions, Val?
No other questions right now. I don't know. Oh, wait, hang on. There is one more.
Great. Please. Yeah, we have time.
What about anger issues? I know you're familiar with this one, and this comes up a lot with delusions over and over again. Yeah. So those are two things. So let's just talk about delusions for a second. So depending on what's causing the neurological impairment, and often that folks that have it from a more of a neurological, like Parkinson's and things like that, they will start with their hallucinations, paranoia, and delusions before their short-term memory. And so that may look like they think that people are stealing from them, or that someone's breaking into the house, or things like that. And that's really hard. But that's real. And there's a lot of education and things that you can do to help that person. And sometimes some delusions and hallucinations aren't bad. Sometimes you may see them talking to somebody and they're just completely content about it. So I would not ignore that. But roll that into the question about anger. Behavior
is communication. If I cannot express why I'm feeling the way I am, I have to express something. So I may use anger. So the more we can set up the environment, the more that we can kind of predict or know the person so well. So getting to know their biographies, what frustrates them, what agitates them, so they don't have to get angry is the A+ answer. Easier said than done, but anger means I am frustrated and I've lost control of something, so I don't know what else to do about it. People don't anger just to be angry. People have anger because I'm missing something right now in my life.
Cheryl, you do have another question, but before we go on to the questions, just in lieu of time, just to make sure that if anybody wants to or has to leave, they can do so. If you want to stay on for questions, there are a couple more. But I just wanted to bring to your attention our Live Well with Dementia course. If you or a family member are interested, it is a course for the caregivers or for a person with a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's. Or mild cognitive impairment. There's a lot of resources here. There are over 7 modules, 9 hours of information, written materials. We talk about, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I got a telephone call. I forgot to do not disturb, but it gives everybody the option to, we provide you with legal guidance. We provide you with information regarding stress and sleep and eating properly, taking care of yourself if you're a caregiver. There's a lot of information written and through video. And also the best thing is it's self-paced. And so what can happen is you can do this at your own pace, whenever you feel like you want to listen to a certain segment, go back and listen to it again. It's $2.99, but there's an early bird coupon code on our website, and you are able to get that course right now for $149 if you're interested. Cheryl is part of the course. I don't know if there's something else that you would like to add.
No, I'm just going to reiterate that there's so much that needs to happen and you need to think about when somebody has a diagnosis for them to live well. And anytime you need to call Val, talk more about the course, it's really well. You get us too when you get the course, because we, can help you as well. So, and Val, to answer your question, I will be glad to stay on for another whatever minutes. Feel free. If you don't want to stay on, I'd love to answer these questions. I'm so excited that you jumped on with us. We're here for you. And anything that we can do to help you, you just give us a call. But I'm going to answer whatever questions that come up, Val, if you have time to help me with this. So
sure do. We have a question about, my mom used to love art, but now she doesn't feel like doing that. She's letting some of her interests go. And how do I let her feel meaning and enjoy life if her interests if her interests aren't of interest anymore?
Yeah. So this is a twofold answer, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not even going to play one on TV, but sometimes you have to look at, I have 2 ways of looking at this. One is when you start seeing somebody completely lose interest in something that they used to love, I would talk to the doctor and see if depression is creeping in. Dementia and depression run together often because, of course, why not? I have this cognitive loss. I can't do the things I used to be able to do, and therefore I don't think I can do anything. And so it's just easier not to do something because I just can't get the energy to do it. And I'm afraid I can't do it well. Now, with that being said, there's the other side of it is I'm afraid that I just can't do that anymore. I might have been able to paint, but maybe I can't hold that paintbrush anymore. Is there another medium that you can excite her about? This is an example, smaller canvases, sponge painting, things that you can just already have, and then they have outlines and then they can fill in. Clay, to use those fingers, so you're also exercising, and maybe you can keep those pincer grips a little bit more. So it depends on what kind of art maybe going to the art museum, looking at art books. There's just always something that possibly you can give them so you can tap into what they're still able to do and get them excited about it.
And Cheryl, I can help you with this next question.
Okay.
What steps or testing is appropriate for a potential person with dementia? It depends on what stage, but that's what we do. So first steps are to call me and we talk about what some of the symptoms are, what your concerns are, what you're experiencing with yourself or your loved one. We have a program called Discovery where we do a very in-depth, thorough cognitive assessment as well as a whole lifestyle assessment. There are many things that affect your brain, from how you're eating, how you're sleeping, what your activities are, if you've been affected by metals or mold. It's really getting to the root cause of what is causing the cognitive decline or the anxiety, depression. There's so many things. So what we do is we gather family and health history first. Dr. Bergman takes a very close look at that information. You come in for a visit with him, which is usually about 2.5 hours. We do in-depth cognitive testing, more than just a paper MOCA. We can do a brain map, which is like doing an EKG for the heart. It's a QEEG, but it shows what parts of the brain aren't working optimally. We also do a lot of blood work, and the blood work provides a lot of markers. For 109 different markers are what we're looking at depending upon the person, and some other testing may be required. But then when all of those results come back, because some people have deficiencies that they aren't aware of, some people don't methylate properly, some people don't even know if they have a marker for Alzheimer's, and that's what the blood work shows us. And then you come in for an assessment based on the next call is actually where do I go from here? What do I do? And what the findings are. And then we have a whole team of professionals that can help you implement along the way. So I hope that has helped you.
And I'm going to add to that is that what you're not going to do is you're not going to let a doctor just say, oh, that's normal. They're over 80. They have dementia. That is the worst answer. Please do yourself a favor. Find a good geriatrician in your area, call us, talk to another doctor. But if anybody still in this day and age is just saying, well, that's just normal, that's just what happens when you get older, that is a bad answer. So,
and also, Cheryl, thank you for adding that. We also find people earlier and earlier and earlier. And a lot of times someone that's younger, say in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, will start to notice some changes. And what will happen is their primary care doctor will say, oh, you're just stressed, or but there's something causing it. So before anybody else that something is wrong. So always, look out for yourself. I think that goes for everything that we have going on in our life, that we know first if we're not feeling as optimal as we should be or how we felt before. So always look what you've got.
Thanks for asking that question. I'm sure that was helpful to a lot of people.
I think that's it. Any other questions, guys? Thank you for joining us today.
All right.
Again, feel free to email us, our website you saw, our telephone number, and thank you again. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care, everybody. Be well.
Bye-bye.